schools is not in order. Start tonight with Joey Moore, and she's going to talk about lead testing.
Hi, thank you for having public comment. This is my first time here, so I'm a little bit nervous. I was really hoping to come before the board for the first time and ask for something for our school library or brag about our school garden, but instead I felt compelled to come tonight because of the most recent results from the lead testing that was shared with us last week. I'm a Jefferson parent, and I just have to say the results were really shocking. I felt so confident having my precious child in school at Jefferson. I felt like this was a safe environment for him. And then to get these results back, it was just, really disheartening. And it kind of shook my family. We felt a little bit like, wait, this isn't the safe place that we thought we were sending him to. So I know that you can't address direct questions for me, but there are some questions that I have that I want to share. And that maybe can further some discussion down the road. One of my biggest questions is there a way to find out what the lead is directly coming from? So is it an infrastructure problem that's in our own school? Is it something that the water is leaving the city's facility and we are picking up lead along the way? Where is the responsibility for addressing this concern? A bigger system issue? Is there a corrosion control problem that might be happening? So in other places where there's been increased amount of lead in water, it's because the corrosion control, which is the stuff that is put in water to prevent lead coming out of pipes that are already out there, is inadequate. So is that something that can be researched and more information can be shared with parents? I also wanted to express that I don't feel like the solution to the problem that was shared, that our sinks and faucets will be marked not suitable for drinking, that doesn't feel like an adequate solution as a parent. We need to be thinking about this on a broader, like long-term perspective, and just shutting off sinks and marking things, no kids, you can't drink this water, you can't drink this water. That's really inadequate for us because it's just so important for the teachers to have a functioning school and for our kids to have a functioning school. Please consider giving more communication to families. I've heard from other families that the letter that was sent home was confusing. They didn't understand what it meant. So if you could consider, other ways to communicate with us. I know it was in 2 languages, but we need a 3rd language for Jefferson, and to continue sharing information to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have David Barrow, and he would like to speak on residency.
Yes, Mr. Superintendent, members of the school board. My name is David Barrow. I'm here to speak on behalf of a group of concerned citizens who stand in opposition to the ongoing residency check. Opposition that there is a sufficient number of non-resident students in the district to merit this survey. We'd like written responses to the questions I'm going to give you, and I'll be glad to submit them to the clerk and leave my name and a contact address where you can respond to the questions that we have. One question I have is, with the national investigations, is there a financial incentive for them to move from phase 1 to phase 2 and then phase 3? In other words, is there a fee structure such that they find something in phase 1, move to phase 2, move to phase 3, that the fees they'll be paid will actually be higher based on the continuing through the phases? If not, if that's not the case, we would like to acquire a copy of the contract with National Investigations to understand the fee structure, how they're being paid. If so, if there is in fact an incentive for them to move through these phases, we'd like to ask whether or not this arrangement represents a sort of conflict of interest, since the company would stand to receive more money from the district if it's able to make the argument for proceeding to phase 2 and 3. If this conflict of interest exists, any numbers generated by National Investigations would be suspect, and we would ask that they not be released to the public, as they would unfairly bias public opinion regarding the number of non-resident students attending our schools. In other words, such a survey would be questionable as to whether that would be objective if they are being paid based on their ability to move on through the phases. Point I'm making. We further suggest that the contract with National Investigation be terminated, since it's our understanding this firm was selected on the recommendation of J. Doe. Want to know whether that's true or not. An anonymous party who's currently suing the district and whose ends would be served by a survey report that might inflate the numbers in those initial phases. Okay, so that's first thing. Also, a party apparently involved as a plaintiff in the J. Doe lawsuit against the district is claiming in a public forum to have knowledge of the results of phase 1 of the residency check already. The release of these results by the school board, the administration, or the district's council would appear to be a violation of public trust, since these results have not been made public to the taxpayers in the district. If the results of phase 1 of the residency check have been given to this party or other parties, we'd like to know by whom and why they were given to that other party. If they've not been released to anyone, we would like the board to publicly refute any claim to the contrary, that they have been released. The perception that a party or parties is being fed inside information by a party or parties holding the public trust damages the credibility of the board as stewards of the district and shouldn't go unchallenged. Thank you.
Mr. Burrows, your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Oh, you're done. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, you said you would leave the questions.
Pardon me?
You said you'll leave your questions.
Yes, I'll leave those with the clerk, and then and I'll leave it with my email address. And is that the easiest thing? Email
Yes, sir.
address? Okay, I'll leave that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Cassie Winchell, and she would like to speak on residency.
Hi, I'm here just to lend support to the group of concerned citizens who stand in opposition to the ongoing residency check and who reject the proposition that there are a sufficient number of non-resident students in the district to merit the survey. But because we have 3 minutes per, I'm going to let my other colleagues do most of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And next, we have Sarah Moses.
Well, I would be using Cassie's time then. I have
It's 3 minutes per person.
we submitted these to you. I have two now, but we gave these out to you guys before. So the items on the list are taken from the audited annual financial report that every district must submit under the Illinois State Board of Education annually, so that they are numbers subject to challenge. The items on the list are the review items reported by District 428 in 2016 that are variable based on student enrollment, meaning they are dollar amounts multiplied by the number of students the district reports for enrollment. Just to reiterate, the total dollar amount in the enrollment-based funding for the whole district is $30 million in revenue, which works out to be $4,716 per student. Note that this number is understated because some of the items, the ones that are highlighted, move more if low income and or minority students are lost in the district. If you take the per pupil loss in revenue times 5% loss in enrollment, so if we were to get rid of 5% of our students due to residency issues, that would be 6,450 students that would be going to our district illegally. So that doesn't even seem very realistic. Typically what Mr. Beitler said when he came was he finds anywhere from 2 to 3%. So this would be 5%. It would mean District 428 would have a loss of $1.5 million per year if we kicked out 5% of our students from the district due to residency. This does not include the expense of hiring the firms to pursue their residency status, legal costs associated with disenrolling them, legal costs associated with defending against lawsuits brought by them or interest groups like the ACLU or MALDA, or settlements of lawsuits or judgments against the district for discrimination, which would surely come if we begin removing students from our district, or attempting to. Many of these most vulnerable students are already protected by federal law. It's very slim, narrow margin to be able to actually remove a student from a district. So we're talking about very tiny numbers here to really put ourselves vulnerably at risk for lawsuit and looking very incompetent as a district as a whole, and a very ugly mark on our community as well. Student mobility in District 428 defined as students entering or leaving the district after initial enrollment, October 1st each year is the cutoff, is down in the last 5 years from 13% to 12%. This is exactly in line with state averages. The fact that this number is steady and consistent with the rest of the state refutes any argument that Dekalb is being targeted by students from Chicago as an easy mark for educational services. Homeless students are 2% of the district enrollment, down from 3% 5 years ago. This is exactly the state average as well. Again, this refutes the argument that students are disproportionately registering District 428 and claiming homeless status to get services. District 428 has dropped 9% in white students in the last 5 years. The same time frame, we've increased 4% in Black students, 5% in Hispanic students. The Illinois State Board of Education's words. Given this change in our demographic, any argument centered around recent spike in enrollment despite decreases in the housing sales or similar arguments discussing recent changes in enrollment are by definition racial profiling, and that is not something that we want to be happening in our district or associated with our school board. I can certainly wrap it up. So my concern would be that why has the school board submitted to the demand of JDOE when the demography study, so I wasn't even talking about the demography study. The demography study has also supported what I just said, that there is no residency issue in DeKalb. And that was told to us by the demographer. This report card also shows this, that there's no evidence of residency issues. This case would most likely be thrown out based on lack of evidence in a court of law. You have now opened the door for all of these problems and issues, and as taxpayers, we are concerned about the cost of lawsuits from organizations like MALDEF and the ACLU, which have a history of suing school districts that discriminate against students. Given the likelihood of further legal action against the district, we would like to know if the board considers the interest, would like to know the board considers it in the interest of the taxpayers to continue with the residency checks and not be limited. Our limited resources should not be squandered on frivolous lawsuits when we are facing serious issues like high levels of lead in our kids' water.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next, we have Tiana Brown, and she would like to speak to student safety and reporting.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tiana Brown, and I'm a proud parent of a second grader that currently attends Croydon Elementary School. And we've been a part of the district for 3 years now. I come before all of you this evening with a very pressing issue that has been presented to the community on more than one occasion. The safety of our children during school hours and how they are being reported not only to school officials, but also to parents. All children deserve to learn in a facility that is safe, and no child should ever be in fear of attending school. All parents deserve to be made aware of any issues that happen with their children while in the care of administrators. I speak from firsthand experience when I say that there has been and currently still is a problem when it comes to notifying parents of the issues that our children face on a day-to-day basis. Issues such as health, safety, and behavior should be a top priority every day. And the fact that some parents are called or receive correspondences while others do not is unsatisfactory. It has also been brought to my attention that this is not the first time that the board has been notified about this going on at multiple schools in the district. I have reviewed the student handbook, and I am very aware that there are policies in place. But what are we to do when those policies aren't being enforced? Why is it that some parents are only notified by their children when they are injured at school or when being bullied? Why is it that safety measures are constantly being ignored and disciplinary action is continuously disregarded? As of now, I am currently compiling a list of names and stories from parents all over the district whose children have been affected by these issues, and I will not rest until the board adds fixing this to their agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Katie Virosis. Is that right?
Oh, no, but it's okay.
Okay, Brooks. And this is about the field trip.
My name is Katie Firos. I'm a parent here in District 428. My daughter is a second grader at Brooks Elementary. On Tuesday, January 9th, my daughter attended a PBIS celebration field trip. The trip was to go sledding at Russell Woods Forest Preserve. I was not present as a chaperone for this event, but I have spoken with a few chaperones who were present and also 5 different parents from the second grade class alone whose children were injured on this field trip. Frankly, I'm a little disturbed by the different accounts that I have heard from my fellow parents. I'm turning to you, the board, for help in getting to the truth of the matter, and I do have some general questions that I'm seeking answers for. Question number 1, were the conditions of Russell Woods in fact safe for sledding on Tuesday, January 9th? I feel that 5 student injuries from just one grade level alone is excessive. I also question this because at 10:45 on that Tuesday, I received an email from Principal Burkondon canceling grades 3, 4, and 5 sledding trip, which was scheduled for the following day due to lack of snow. Question 2, who was the dedicated first aider for this field trip? And was there adequate first aid kit on site? I ask this because I know of one parent chaperone who was asked by Brooke's staff if she had carried any Neosporin with her. I also question this because I have been on field trips in the past where I've had to use my own personal first aid kit because the staff's first aid kit wasn't properly stocked. Question number 3, at what point does the head injury constitute a call for the paramedics? I'm very much aware of Monica Jefferson's claims against the school district. I'm not here to discuss the claims that Monica has made against the school, but what I am asking for is verification. Verification as to what degree of severity does a head injury need to be before paramedics are called. Question number 4, what is the protocol for notifying parents when a student is injured? Of the 5 parents that I have spoken with, 2 claim to have never been contacted by the school. 1 received an email. Another parent received a message by the teacher via a teaching app, phone app. And the 5th parent states that she was contacted by the school nurse, the principal, and the teacher. How can there be such a variance in the manner in which parents are being contacted by the school in regards to their injured child for the same event? In closing, I'm concerned by the perception of how last minute this field trip was thrown together. While I'm sure intentions were good, it seems poorly planned, from the permission slips being sent out only the Friday before to the parents not being asked as chaperones. As a parent, this has been a huge disappointment and violation of trust, and I'm frustrated by the school's silence on the matter, especially in regards to the police that have been a presence the days following the field trip. So I'm trying to the school board, to the superintendent in hopes that I can get the answers that I seek and help to find ways to prevent this incident from happening in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next we have board committee reports and correspondence. Okay. Okay, next we have Superintendent Jamie Craven will share information on the 50th anniversary of Kishwaukee College.
I may.
Okay.
Can we bump this to the end of the meeting and I'll
Sure.
go get
Okay.
I left at my office.
Okay. Next one is non-business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through D. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ray Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Alburn,
Yes.
Mary Millette,
Yes.
Tony Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Zalman.
Yes.
Next is the business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through D. Do you have a motion?
So
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeff Alburn,
Yes.
Mary Millette,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Howard Zalman,
yes.
Ray Davis.
Yes.
Next, we have approval of a release of closed session minutes for public inspection. This is an action item. That the Board of Education not or authorize the release of any minutes of closed meetings for public inspection at this time due to confidentiality reasons in order to protect the public interest or the privacy of individuals. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mary Millette,
What, can I ask again, what is the recommendation that we not?
That the Board of Education not authorize the release of any minutes of closed.
I want the affirmative to that, to not.
Yes.
So it's a yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Slide deck.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
No.
Howard Zalman,
Yes.
Ray Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Halpern?
Yes.
Terry Hoffman? Next, we have business and finance, district level testing results, and this is an informational item. Tammy Carson?
If you recall, last year I was in front of the board speaking of the lead in the water testing requirements that have come through from Senate Bill 550. Last year, Governor Rauner did sign that bill requiring school districts to test their drinking water sources in any buildings that were built before 2000. And in August of last year, the board approved the hiring of Aries Consulting as the firm to do our testing, required testing in the district. Jeff from Aries Consulting is present in the audience, as well as Brian Favor is also here from the city of Dekalb. He's in charge of the water division and is also responsible for the water testing for the city of Dekalb, and offered to be present tonight should there be any questions. We completed the test throughout the district in the areas that we discussed at the board meeting in August, and those test results were received by the district a week ago yesterday, and at that time we have 7 days to notify our parents of any results over a 5.0 test, result. And so with that, we, and I do want to remind the board of a couple of things. The 5.0 is the notification level. The law does not have a remediation level, a level where it says that we are required as a school district to remediate the results. That was not part of the Senate bill, but the board decided in August that our remediation level, or action level as it's referred to by many of the cities and municipalities, is 15.0. So any results at 15.0 parts per billion, our board decided that would be our action level. The US EPA action level for schools is 20, but we again took a more conservative approach at 15 prior to receiving any of our test results. So, and the cities, the municipalities, the town of Portland, the village of Malta, their action levels are also 15 parts per billion. So we received our results. We notified our parents by email, and for those parents and families that do not have email, we sent a paper copy on Friday. And in my opinion, the results for a district our size were very manageable and very easy to handle. So to recap some of the results, our drinking fountains, we had 103 drinking fountains that were tested, and obviously drinking fountains we're consuming the water. We originally, and first glance through the report, in the summary report, saw that all drinking fountains were under 15 parts per billion. Yesterday, as we were going through a more detailed process, and we were determined that there was one drinking fountain in the district that was over 15 parts per billion, and that was located at Huntley Middle School. So that is information that was not originally in the summary report that was provided to us. But again, after going through all of the building results, we did find that one drinking fountain. So yesterday,
If I may ask, what level was that?
what level?
Did you have that level? The 20, 30?
15.5.
No, 0.5 over the recommended
action level.
remediation level.
Our, well, not recommended, our decided. action level.
What we recommend.
Correct. I would also like to say that this is a drinking fountain that is a side-by-side drinking fountain. There's two right next to each other. And the one right next to it was, it was less than 15. I don't have that number in front of me, but I almost think it was at an undetectable level, which means it's 2.0 or less. But what we did yesterday, while school was out of session before the children came back today, was we took that drinking fountain completely out of service. We shut it off. There's no water going to it, so the students will no longer be using it. Because of the results of that building, we do tend to believe that the drinking fountain, the actual fountain itself, is the source of the higher levels. So we've ordered a replacement for both units, and we will get that replaced, retest it, see if the levels on both sides of the unit come in under 15 before we turn that water back on for student use, student or staff use. The rest of the drinking fountains, we did have 5 that were above the notification level, but less than the 15. I am recommending that we take a proactive approach to this because of those being drinking fountains. and replace those remaining 5. Actually, it'd be 4 fountains in the district. One of those 5 is a fountain that isn't even used any longer in our pool area, and we would just shut that down completely. So my recommendation is we move forward by just replacing those 4 remaining drinking fountains in the district that were between a 5 and a 14.9. The other areas that were tested were the health office and the kitchens in the district, the production kitchens as well as the elementary kitchens. And there was 1 sink in the district in a health office that was found over 15.0. That was at Brooks Elementary. That was the only water source at Brooks that was over 15.0. That sink immediately yesterday was taken out of service, and we replaced it with bottled water. Again, because that being the only water source in the district or in that building that was over 15, we do believe it is something to do with the fixture itself versus the building's water supply. That building will continue to use bottled water in the nurse's office until we can get a replacement fixture, a retest, and the results back to confirm that it comes in under 15.0.
If I can ask.
Yes.
So at Brooks, I have 2 questions. One is, if 15 is our level, why are we replacing it 5? That's my first question. And then why are we, if it comes out of 5, it seems it's below the 15 that we replaced.
You're speaking of the Brooks Health Office
No, I'm
thing?
talking about, you said we were gonna be replacing 5 fountains that came in at 5.
I'm recommending though, there's a range that came in between 5 and 14.9. And because these are drinking fountains and these are strictly used for consuming water and not potentially hand washing as some of these other sources are for, I'm just, after further discussions with administration, we felt that it would be a proactive approach.
So
and
for safety
inexpensive.
reasons, we're doing that.
And it's a very inexpensive replacement that we feel would be a good proactive, being that they are drinking fountains.
So the concern is high about safety of the kids there. The second question is that I have is that sink at Brooks, that we don't drink out of sinks, do we? I mean, what is the function of that sink that you're replacing at Brooks that came in fairly high?
Well, because it is in a health office and there is medicine that is distributed, there can be times that they have filled it with a cup of water filled from that sink so that a child could take medicine.
Okay.
So for that reason, we feel it's appropriate that we replace the fixture there and then retest it. Again, take it out of service until we have those retest results under 15 and provide bottled water until that time.
So in all cases, when we remove a fixture from service, it's basically in process. I mean, we are in the process of replacing it, and for the moment we are having it out of service. It will then be taken care of as quickly as we can get it taken.
For these specific sinks or water sources that we are replacing and then retesting, that is not all of them that are over 15, because in the case of classrooms, that's a different scenario.
You're gonna be
I'll be
talking
getting
about
to that point.
Good.
I'm just telling specifically of the ones that were over 15.
Thank you.
Tammy,
Yes.
in those that are going to be replaced, drinking fountains, how do we know that the fountain itself is the area where the lead is, from which the lead is leaching, rather than the pipes that go to it?
We will find that out upon replacing it and retesting it. And because when you have a side-by-side, which is coming from the same water line, that one is coming in well under or at an undetectable level, well under 15 or undetectable, but the one immediately next to it is coming in at a higher level. The first assumption is that it's in the fixture.
The purpose of taking the 2 draws, the first draw and the flush sample, is exactly that. So the first draw, the size of it, everything's intended to be the water that's sitting in the fixture. Now we run the fixture for 30 seconds and then take a second sample. And that is supposed to give us a representative sample of what the piping behind it. It's not. Again, it's representative. It's not 100% accurate, but for the most part, our levels where we're replacing are all first draw samples. We have an issue in the pipe behind it. Should be the second draw sample should be identified. So.
And I've taken the new fountains coming in, all got filters and everything in them.
Maybe some of these old ones got probably don't, so.
Do we ever, when we remove the fixtures, do we ever take a sample directly from the pipe was going into the fixture? Do we take a sample of that water and make in other words, in trying to come to the grips with whether it was the fixture itself?
No, we don't. It's not something I'd recommend because now we're doing work and we're likely to create not an occupied scenario because we're working on pipe.
Right, okay.
If we did see significant levels over 15 in the second draw samples, I think then we need to look at how do we narrow it down. That would indicate an issue with the piping system. For the most part, for this first draw sample.
Thank you.
Moving to the kitchens or the food service areas, we had 3 sinks that were over the 15.0 parts per billion. 2 of them were at Huntley Middle School, and they were actually in an area that was a backup for washing of pots, filling of pails for cleaning purposes. They were not in an area that washes food or is used for food prep. So those are now labeled as hand washing only, those 2 sinks, and we won't be using them for any backup if it would relate to food prep. Those are not approved through the food service department for approved food prep use. And then the one at Rosette, it is a sink that was used for washing of vegetables. And what we have done there was a 2-basin sink. There is a 2-basin sink there. The left side came in at an under 15 level, and the right side came in over 15, but it fed through the same water line again. So the assumption comes back to the fixture. We have ordered a replacement fixture because of the complexity of it. It's a sprayer as well as a faucet. It's going to take a couple of weeks to receive. So we just got a sprayer from another source more locally, and we have capped off the right side. So it has not been used since the students returned today. The sprayer's been moved to the left side, which the results came in under 15. So it can continue to be used as a food prep sink, but we're using the side of the sink that came in with test results under 15. And then the last one was the classrooms. And the classrooms, there were sinks that came in throughout the district over 15.0. Those classroom sinks have been labeled, signs have come up as of yesterday that those sinks are for hand washing purposes only. And so any sink that came in throughout the district for classroom sinks are now labeled as hand washing only.
One more question, Sarah. So am I to understand that in general, we have 20% is the federal remediation recommendation or level for
US
PPP. Not percent, PPP.
20 per billion, right? 20 parts per billion.
20 parts per billion is the recommended US EPA action level. It's in the US EPA school-led drinking water guidance document. There's no federal or local requirement at the school level.
Okay.
But that's the recommended action level.
Okay, so we are we're erring on the part of, if we are bringing it down, that to 15 is our recommendation. So from what I'm hearing you say, except in one case, the sprayer case maybe, they all were under the 20, were they not? I mean, you said 15.5 in one case, on the double drinking fountain.
Yeah. So there were some sources that were.
Okay, so there were a couple places that were under 20, but a great many of them were in that 15 to 20 range.
You're talking about the ones that were over 15 that were remediating.
Yeah,
there were over 20 in those
okay.
handful that we are doing remediation on, remediating associations.
But in all cases being remediated.
Question for the city. Brian, is there an average that you guys try to keep all these levels at? Let's say the lead and whatever, all the chemicals, if you will, and so on. What is that?
Specifically for lead, you're speaking?
Yeah, because I mean, one question's gonna be, well, it's coming from the city, it's coming in the building,
Right.
so.
I could maybe take 3 minutes or so.
Go ahead.
So I've been with the city since 1990, so for the past 27 years. The lead rule came into effect in 1990, so I've been dealing with the lead issue pretty much from the get-go. And so what the lead issue or rule meant to municipalities, which is where it started, was that we're required to take a certain set of samples, number of samples, depending on the size of the community. So for us, for the city of Dekalb, it was 60 samples every 6 months we had to collect. Those samples had to be collected from tier 1 risk homes, meaning homes that had lead service lines or were built between a certain era of time when lead solder was used for copper piping. And so all of the samples had to be collected from tier 1 homes. The city of DeKalb's water supply, groundwater, does not have lead in it. The water that we send from our treatment plants, after we treat the water, we soften the water, we remove iron from the water. That does not have lead in it. The water mains that carry the water main or water to your house or school does not have lead in it. It's strictly a localized issue to each residence, to, as you have found out, not even just to each residence or business, it's to each faucet within each residence or business. So of all the things that we test for, lead is the most difficult for municipal water supply to deal with, because it's not something we can remove at the source. We can't treat for it at one of our treatment plants. It's at the facility. And so one thing that the city of Dekalb has been doing since the 1970s is adding phosphate to the water. Phosphate was originally added to the water to sequester the iron, meaning to keep the iron in suspension. So we didn't remove the iron at that time. It kept the rusty water complaints from occurring. So the iron was still there, but it just kept it from turning the water orange. But one benefit that they found from phosphate is that it puts a microscopic coating on the inside of pipes. And it protects the metals, not just lead, but any metals. All your pipes are made of metal. It keeps the metals from leaching into the water supply. And so that was one benefit that at the time they didn't realize phosphate had, but getting into the lead rule, they found that it was a very good benefit, and one that is how municipalities treat for lead. It's lead phosphates, and luckily we've been doing it since the 70s. So in 1990, we started collecting samples, 60 samples every 6 months, and the way we're required to do it is first draw samples from high-risk homes, and 15 being the action level. It's the only EPA requirement that we don't have a maximum contaminant level. Other things such as radium or those types of things have a maximum contaminant level. Lead does not have a maximum contaminant level, it's an action level. Meaning that at 15 parts per billion does not necessarily mean it's a health risk. I mean, the fact of the matter is, no lead is and I told her, was it Miss Moore?
Yeah.
Okay, I totally agree. I have a 2-year-old at home. No lead is good. No lead is good. But it is an action level, meaning that is the level at which municipalities have to start treating the water. And usually it's adding phosphate. And so DeKalb has been in full compliance with the lead rule since 1990. We've never failed. That's not to say that we haven't had samples that have been over 5, which is below 5 is non-detect, so they can't test even below 5. But over 5, we have had samples. We have had samples over 15. But the way they do it with municipalities is you take your 60 samples, you list them highest to lowest. Take your highest samples down to lowest. And then what we go by is a 90th percentile, meaning you count down 6 samples, so the first 10%. If you're below 15 parts per billion at the 90th percentile, your 6th sample down, then you're below the action level and no further action is required. So that's how kind of the rural works for municipalities. And like I said, we've been in full compliance since 1990, so we've never failed that. When Flint, Michigan occurred, obviously that brought up a lot of kind of a focus back on lead. And what happened up in Flint, if you're somewhat familiar with that, is that Flint was getting their water supply from a certain source and switched to another source. But when you switch sources of water supply, that can have a detrimental effect on the corrosiveness of your water. In Dekalb, we used to have a radium issue in Dekalb. Those that have lived here long enough would know that we used to have elevated levels of radium. We built 5 treatment plants to treat for the radium, which was softening the water. But we knew when we did that, which was in the year 2000, that we were going to change the water chemistry. That's when we're going to start softening the water. Soft water is more corrosive. And so we had to be aware, and we were aware, that this could have a negative effect on our lead. And we did see at that time, after we started softening the water, that our lead level started to creep up. We didn't fail the action level, but we did notice that first samples was higher than what they had been. And when you do that too, I should just mention the EPA requires you to start all over again. So you go back to collecting 60 samples every 6 months. And I failed to mention also, once you do that for a period of time, EPA allows you to be put on reduced monitoring. So if you can show a history of being in compliance, you cut your samples in half. So instead of 60, we go to 30. And then you only have to collect them every 3 years. And so I know Ms. Carson did some research on our sample results of Malta and found the last time we tested for lead was 2016. Malta was, I believe, was 2015. And she had some questions when she called me this afternoon as to why that was. I explained to her that we don't do it every year. We're on reduced monitoring because we've shown this history of compliance. But when you change your source water, you go back to square one again. And you collect 60 samples again every 6 months. And that's what we did. And that's when we noticed, our lead levels are creeping up a little bit. We adjust the phosphate, and ultimately that took care of the problem. Within 6 months or so, we were right back heading down again. And so I do want to assure you that from a municipal standpoint, we are in full compliance. That being said, each house, each business, each school is a whole other game, because we can add phosphate to the water that's going to coat those pipes. But if you have a faucet, and I think the data showed that the drinking fountains that were being used constantly, really, for the most part, they all passed. If you have a faucet in a science room that sits there for 4 or 5 days without use, there's nothing that the municipality can do to solve that. There's, to a certain degree, nothing you can do other than potentially change that faucet, assuming that faucet is the issue. And it's not further down, which I think in this case, from the data that I've seen, and I just saw the article in the paper over the weekend, is the first I heard of this, so I haven't had time to go through all the data, but from what I've seen, it seems like it's localized to certain faucets, and especially those that are sitting for an extended period of time. But I will say it's not just the schools either, Ms. Lawrence. It's every home in Dekalb and every community outside of Dekalb. If you live in a house that was built between a certain period of time, or you have a faucet that's older than the time that they banned lead from being used in faucets, because lead is placed in metals such as brass to make it harder. It isn't anymore. I mean, it's not allowed to be used, but up until a few years ago, it was. Lead, unfortunately, was put in many things. So it's not a school issue. It's a nationwide issue, and it's potentially in every residence. And all we can do is try to educate you on things you can do to minimize the risk. Flushing lines, very, very helpful if you can. And most people do. I mean, most times you don't get up and immediately just grab and drink the water from a tap. Let it run to its home. That's going to minimize the risk. But hope I went over 3 minutes, but
No, it's fine.
I just wanted to at least explain what that is. And one more thing I should say, just because I went to Illinois State, I got my degree in environmental health. One of the things I thought about doing at the time was working with the EPA. A lot of the studies that we had at that time, and I'm no expert, but a lot of the classes that I had talked about how the EPA sets standards, drinking water standards, but not just drinking water, air, you know. But one thing you should know is that EPA, when they set drinking water standards, for instance, they use the best science they have available. And some of it's pretty concrete, and some of it's a little sketchy, but they use the best science they have available to formulate a standard. And what they try to do is find out what's the risk involved with, and I'll just use barium for instance. Let's say barium, the maximum level for barium is say 30 parts per billion. But the EPA doesn't set the standard at 30 parts per billion because that's what they think the risk is at that point. There's a factor of 10 in every EPA standard. So it may be 300 parts per billion that they have determined that the science that they have available says 300 parts per billion could be harmful to you, and there's a 1 in 100,000 chance that those people that drink barium at this level may get cancer. But they don't set it at 300 parts per billion, they put a factor of 10 in that, which brings it down to 30 parts per billion. I just want to just mention that, not to say that 30 parts per billion of barium is good for you, but it's at least puts it in a context that, you know, there are safety factors built into all these EPA regs. And as new science becomes available, they may drop that barium level from 30 parts to 10. And so that's kind of what happened with the lead too. You know, we had a rule that we've complied with for the past 27 years. This is something new for all of us. And some of the studies that the EPA also has recently been doing is we take first draw samples, and that's the way the rule has always been for us. So this idea of running water, taking a first draw sample, but then letting it run for 30 seconds, and grab another sample or a minute, is something new. And it comes from studies that were done that said, you know what, maybe the problem isn't necessarily first draw samples. So they've done studies where they've let the water run for 10 minutes. And every minute they grab a sample. And what you see is this type of thing. It's high at first and then drops down, and 3 minutes later it goes back up and back down. So it's really just a hard thing to get a hold of, you know. And like I said, I hope you work with the school district on this. I hope you work with us, and it's the most difficult thing that we have to try to address from a municipal level. And as you can see, it's a hard thing to address from a school level. And it's not just Dekalb, it's Sycamore, as you saw. And I don't have additional information from the rest of the state, but you're going to see this in many, many more schools because lead was put in, unfortunately, a lot of things. So I would be happy, Ms. Moore, to share any information we have with you or sit down and talk with you or anyone else. And if you talk to anyone else in the community, please give them my number or have them call the water division. I'm more than happy to share any information of all the test data that we have on it and educational information that we can provide. So that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
The only other thing I wanted to mention was the changes we'll be doing with our maintenance and our custodial staff. We are going to be implementing a preventative maintenance program, which will involve a frequency of flushing out the required drinking sources, as well as potentially going through a retesting requirement. That I shouldn't say that there isn't a requirement when it comes to retesting as it is in the state law or the Senate bill. So we'll determine what we feel is appropriate based on input from our expert at Aries Consulting also.
So for Aries, and or the city, if you want to weigh in again, how often does an entity like a school district or whomever might hire you, have you come back, say a month later or at some point in time, and as the gentleman from the city was saying, that was a real time when you saw the spikes. But how often does somebody have you come back and do a second set, of what you did this go around? And what do you find if that happens?
We're in a little bit
bit of uncharted territory. There really hasn't been a lot of lead water testing. I certainly don't want to speak for every district or many districts doing proactive testing. You know, it's probably a good thing that we're doing testing. The majority of the input we've gotten from districts is that not a lot of them are going to, at least initially, be doing retesting. I think they're looking to see, what's going to come regulatory wise. And, you know, I don't know when we'll see that. Certainly, IDH is pushing that, but I don't know actually where that'll actually come to fruition. I think it's something that I wouldn't do any more than annually. I would focus on drinking sources. I'd focus on, just from a cost standpoint, I'd focus on getting representative samples as opposed to, you know, let's sample all of our high risk sources, drinking fountains, kitchen sinks, and then maybe some representative sampling throughout the building just to see what's going on there. I think we could probably do a streamlined program that would give us a good picture of what's going on in the building.
We're certainly going to test the ones that were problematic.
We'll be retesting the ones that we are replacing fixtures and that before we are turning those back on for use by students.
Once we replace the fixture with the test.
We're more talking about a
future
preventative maintenance program.
Right, yeah, I'm making that clear to the people that are concerned out in the audience. We're certainly going to make sure that any of the questionable fixtures have been remediated.
I also just want to let the board know and residents know that we have a laboratory at the Water Division 2. We're certified for bacteriological testing. We're not certified for lead testing, but we have lead testing equipment it's very accurate. I mean, we've sent samples, we've tested samples and sent them away, and it's very accurate, but we aren't certified for it. But I did want to just offer to the board, you know, obviously we don't have time to, you know, do 1,000 samples for you, but we're more than happy if there's 20 samples or so, or, you know, by all means, give us a call. We're more than happy to kind of work with you if there's specific spots. Obviously, I'm not trying to take work away from you, but if it's something that is more excessive than that, then obviously, I mean, I would contract that out and also make sure you have certified results. But like I said, we do have testing equipment. We're more than happy to come out, and if there's a few localized ones after you change or after you do some flushing, you just want to do a quick sample, we can do that. So, and residents as well, if you're concerned at your home, give us a call. I'm more than happy to grab a sample and we'll test it for you, free of charge, by the way, free of charge. So, don't tell too many people. Just give you guys here.
When our guys go to change out the fixtures and so on, have them look, I'm sure they probably go about this. But, you know, when you sweat a copper pipe together, you can end up with too much solder, and you can have little beads of lead or solder, which contains lead, some of it fuel stuff. You know, and you could have that trapped in the fixture, in the piping to the fixture. You know, in the valve section and other places, in the aerator and filter. It can be anywhere. And so that's kind of why I was asking our man from Aries about, you know, second and third round testing, because, you know, without doing an actual forensic, you know, tear it all apart and, you know, and check everything everywhere, it's tough, you know, to know. But if the guys are on, you know, on their focus on that kind of stuff, then maybe they'll be able to find something to alleviate some problems.
Somewhat peripheral, but the subject's not going to come up again, so I'm using this opportunity. Where I teach, we have, and in both the places where I teach, they moved to a drinking fountain that has a fill for bottles. Is that something that we are pursuing? Is that something that we have in the pipeline, so to speak?
It isn't something that I have actively pursued versus the standard drinking fountains. If we do have those, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to test both the spigot that's coming out as well as the water, the bottle filling. So it's really more in what is in the drinking fountain system itself, not necessarily if it's a bottle filler or a standard. Yeah. And the bottle fillers do run on the pricier end. I
understand. I'm just curious. Yeah. It was just curious.
And they just do that now. I got them in my school now and they change the water. Because every kid has a water bottle.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's doing water bottles these
Yeah.
days, so you have to.
Yeah, it's more of a luxury thing.
I was just curious.
Tammy, could you please then give us the recommendation so we can give you a consensus to bring it back as an action item?
I don't know necessarily that I would need it as an action item because it would all be something that comes through purchase orders and that is set for an emergency situations. But so with those drinking fountains that I'm recommending, we replace it with something in purchase order and then we go through your approval process. The one that I have already ordered the one that was over 15 from an emergency standpoint. And the fixtures, those are already on order, but the rest can come through the standard purchasing procedure. Okay.
When we first talked about this, I was concerned about the cost. I mean, you're finding that the cost is manageable within our ordinary maintenance budget. But it bothers me that the state mandated the testing without any source of funding for remediation. So I think as a board and as an association, ISPD and ISP and so on, someone needs to get with the legislators and say, look, if there are issues found, you guys are going to have to cough up some money for this somehow. I mean, if you test and test again and you have a repeating problem and it becomes something beyond the scope of your normal maintenance budget, then that's an issue. So I think somebody's got to hold their feet to the fire on this. I consider it irresponsible to go willy-nilly into a testing protocol without having any idea on how you're going to manage the problem. If in fact there is a significant problem found. Fortunately, it's
I'm very
not
pleased,
huge, it's
because we did not know what we would be
so
getting
far.
into when we started this process. If you recall, when I was in front of you, I didn't know what this could be to have the impact on our budget.
Yeah.
But the results, in my opinion, again, very manageable from a financial standpoint as well as.
And I might add, if I jump in, the thing that I would add here is, this is us doing our job. Thank you very much. This is us doing our job. We have people coming, being concerned about their children being in our schools. We're remediating. We're making it so that those levels are down below even the 10% of the amount that is federal, thinking it's of concern. So they have, as you pointed out, Brian, they then moved it down to the 10% of that, and we're going below that. The 10% presumably was the 20 for lead. So presumably 200 is our issue, go down to 10. 20 is the recommended for action, and we're taking it down to 15. So as far as my children being, the children in our district being concerned about our lead, I think we're doing our job and trying to, and this study gave us that opportunity to do it in a very thorough way. So I think we're doing our job. Thank you very much for doing that.
I want to say thank you to the city, to Mr. Faber and the city for bringing an educational discussion, to this. And I know you mentioned the radium, that was an issue many years ago now, and I know that you guys set up our roll and mixture process in order to reduce that to below the required level. So there's a lot of science in this, and as you said, they act on the best science they have at the time, and then, like with other kinds of chemicals, sometimes the levels are reduced as they get better and better science and understand the situation better.
And one more thing, real quick. I just want to say that on our website also, we have the material that your service line is made out of for all the residents and businesses in the community. So that's posted on our website for those that we know. So it'll say whether it's copper, it'll say whether it's lead. If it's blank, unfortunately, there is no record for that. And obviously, our community is 100 and some years old, so for whatever reason, someone didn't write it down at the time that they installed it. But it's either galvanized, copper, or lead for the most part.
No PVC?
No, although PVC has just started being allowed on the homeowner side. The city only owns the service line up to the sidewalk, so beyond that, it's private property, it's the homeowner's responsibility. One thing we do when we come across a lead line, service line, we'll replace it. But unfortunately, all we own is up to the sidewalk, so we can't force the homeowner to place a lead service line if they have one. So we try to remove them when we can. I believe, and I didn't take count of this, but I believe there's like 200 lead service lines in the community, has about 11,000, 200 that we know of. And like I said, we try to remove those, replace with copper, any chance we can, but we're not actively going through the town and digging up service. So I just want to let you know that if you are interested, go on our website, look up your address, and it'll tell you what your, hopefully it'll tell you what your service line material is made of.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
I looked at one thing about the classroom sync recommendation, and it does directly address your concern. One of the problems, when we see higher lead levels, it's typically, one of the main reasons is because water sits in the fixture, sits in the middle of the fixture. The problem is with classroom sinks is that even if we replace all the fixtures, do mitigation, they don't get used regularly. And then if the water sits in the fixture, a year down the line, 2 years down the line, it can still be an issue, and people may or may not be testing. So typically we recommend that classroom sinks are used for hand washing, and then we can focus on preventative maintenance, flushing the drinking fountains, kitchen sinks, healthcare sinks. So it's not just a matter of, you know, leaving it. It's a matter of how do we make sure that the student doesn't go up 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, and they have the same issue. That's one of my concerns. The next time we make that recommendation.
Thanks.
Next, we have the supplemental
Thanks, Andy.
tax levy 2017. This is an action item. That the Board of Education adopt and approve the supplemental tax levy in the amount of $43,887.64 for the 2017 tax year as presented. Do we have a motion?
So
I'll second it. Discussion.
Just on back, we at the beginning of December, we looked at the levy and we're going through the tax levy process. And the reason that we're looking at this levy, additional levy, is because back in November of 2009, when we issued $35 million of our bonds for the referendum, we used those America bonds, and that program, those bonds are taxable, but then the federal government gives us a rebate of 35% of that interest. Over the last few years, they haven't been giving us the total amount due to their budget constraints. So for this last tax year, they restored us about $44,000, so $43,887.64. And we have the opportunity to add this to our 2017 tax levy that we just approved at the last meeting in December. So this is for action. If the board wants to do so, we could add this to that levy, which would cost the taxpayers about $3 based on someone with a $150,000 home.
Does this, if we were to say no and we internally pay for this, what does that do down the road with our, this, we come back next year and do it again?
It basically is an annual event, because every year we don't know how much they're going to sequester is basically what it is. So every year this comes around at the same time we're doing our tax levy, and we can make that decision on a year-to-year basis, whether we want to add this to the levy or not add it to the levy.
Yes. We did the tax levy, and I know we're going to be charging people a lot of money in taxes for a lot of different things. And how long ago was this known about that we would be running into this thing? Why do we have to have a second supplement?
Because we have to wait, because this is after the fact. So this is all based on the payments or bonds that we already made in July, and then this just was actually January 1st of this year. And we don't know, we don't get that rebate from the IRS until late December. So we don't know what that sequestration is going to look like, or that amount's going to look like till after the fact. So when I presented the tax levy, I included this in there to be more conservative, just in case that we were going to do this. So it was included within the total levy amount when I was presenting those numbers.
So we do not raise the total levy amount if we approve this tonight.
Right, it would be this much less. The 44,000 less.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a comment. I would have liked to have voted against the levy that we passed last time. I couldn't do that because we already have a budget. We already know what our costs are. We need to figure out a way to reduce our costs so the next time around we can vote for a smaller levy. This is $43,000 that we would have spent anyway if the Obama administration hadn't offered, the lower interest rate, which then Congress later said, sorry, we can't do that. We're going to sequester it. And so this is money we would have paid out of our pockets. It's real easy for me to say, no, I'm not going to vote for another $3, big deal, against a $150,000 homes tax bill. And I want to send a message. I want to vote no on this, and I want to send a message saying that I want to do everything I can to reduce the cost of operating this district and to reduce the cost of the tax bills in this district and this community. Because in my view, that's the only way we'll ever get back into good financial condition, is to encourage more people to come here by one way at least of having a lower tax bill. So I'm going to vote no, and I'm sending a message saying, let's look at this even deeper. This is an easy one, real easy decision for me. I'm voting no. We've got the money. It's not going to kill us, $43,000. Our fund balance is high enough. As you said, you've already, positioned us in a conservative sense, with the levy as we passed it last time around. So that's my rationale on how I see this thing and how I'm going to vote on it.
Well, if I may, I agree with what you just said, everything that you just said, I agree. And I think that even though it's $3, I mean, we have to start somewhere. And so you may say, oh, what's $3 going to make? What difference is it going to make? It's going to make a difference in the sense that we're making efforts to come down and see what we can do to come down. So this seems like a no-brainer to me. I mean, I'm sorry that it puts us in any constraint, but we've already planned for it. So we've already planned for being conservative, and we have the balance. So I'm going to vote against it as well.
Roll call, please.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
No.
Howard Solomon.
No.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Alman.
No.
Terry Millet.
No.
Victoria Newport.
No. Next, we have the fiscal 2018-2019 budget calendar, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the budget calendar for fiscal year 2018-2019. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Here, a second.
Second.
Every year in January, we look at our budget calendar, and it pretty much stays the same from year to year. It's really January kind of, if we don't start to really start looking at our 18-19 budget, and then also looking at our long-term financial projections. So here, it just outlays what that budget calendar looks like and all the different steps in that process. And as we get updates, and we're starting with FFAC actually to go through the, we started last FFAC meeting to go through the projections and what those assumptions look like. And then also we'll be ready to go through the, our bypass model to see what those look like in the future as well. So this is really just a formality for the board to approve to start that budget process for the 18-19 budget year.
Questions for Cindy?
Yeah, so Cindy, when I looked at this thing on the backup material, the very first row across here is board provides budget directives to administration. This is January 2018. That's when this is supposed to happen, right? Well, it's now the 16th, right? We're almost the end of January, it seems. What directives have we provided so far, folks? Board? I'm sure administration's been doing something, but what has the board done?
Well, I mean, in terms of budget directives, it's really giving the administration the directive to start this process. It's really.
I mean, okay to go ahead and start working on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yes.
then it doesn't really
Yeah, not
mean-
necessarily directives like, okay, it needs to be, I mean, that really
We don't
happens
have to
later
give
on.
administration
Not any specifics.
all the directives by the end of January.
Right, no,
Okay.
because it's really impossible to do that, honestly, there's just not enough information known yet
Yeah.
to do that. So it's really just more the directive to start the process, and then as we go through that process, then we come to the board with what those assumptions look like and what that budget is. And we update it as we go. I don't know if you remember, we usually look at it a number of times, pretty much almost at each board meeting when we get close.
We have that they see what we take in this.
Yeah.
The end of 24, we're starting that process.
Well, I recall that from FFAC days, but the levy had to be in by what, December 26th, I
Yeah,
think, right?
right, the last
You know,
two
so there are
days.
hard dates in some cases, and that's what I'm asking. I want to make sure this is not a hard date. I
Oh,
want to make
no, no,
sure.
this is just more the directive to start.
Yeah, I'm sure that,
The hard date with the budget, we have to have the
Is in
budget passed in
September.
September.
Yeah.
Okay. That's hard.
thank you.
This is us just getting the process started.
Yeah, and just formalizing.
Roll call?
Howard Sullivan,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Alvin,
Yes.
Karen Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Next, we have new business and administration, and this is an informational item, Northern Illinois Big 12 Conference Alignment Update.
Good evening. I'll try to provide you as much information as I can and answer any questions if you have them at the end. I'm going to take you all the way back probably to about a year from now, where this kind of all started, maybe even a little bit earlier. But starting last year, some members of the Northern Illinois Big 12, some of the smaller schools, or some schools, a few larger, but maybe not as competitive in sports or as well as they'd like to be. Started complaining about the size of Dekalb and Yorkville compared to the rest of the schools in the Northern Illinois Big 12. So this kind of went on in a few AD meetings and in passing throughout the last school year. So then this summer, I went to our AD meeting in August. Talk to them about how, obviously it came up there again, about how very first meeting of the year, talk about how our size and how we're too large for the conference. I mentioned to them at the time that we were going to be actively looking to explore options to a new, for Dekalb to take to a new conference. I, in the process, or in the meantime of that, went out and contacted numerous schools and conferences to see if they were interested in possibly having Dekalb come. In September, that continued to go on. In October, there was a shakeup in the Interstate 8. The Interstate 8 down south of us near Plano and Sandwich. But anyway, everybody in the conference left except Plano and Sandwich. Plano and Sandwich came to the Northern Illinois Big 12 because they are left out on their own. He said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in taking us?" We had a special meeting. The entire Northern Illinois Big 12 had a meeting, discussed this. There were a lot of ideas thrown out on the table. At the end of the day, we decided not to move forward with them come into the conference. After this meeting, I don't know how it all took place, but after this meeting, some members of the Northern Illinois Big 12 and Plano and Sandwich had a meeting to get together to talk about potentially breaking off and starting their own conference. We, other members of the basically the east side of the conference, minus Morris, were not involved in this. So we heard about it, we brought it up at our November meeting, and the ADs assured us that nothing was happening. They only had 7 schools involved in the conversations, and none of the schools were going to break off with 7. They had to have 8, or they weren't going to go forward with that. We said, okay, that's fine. And then on December 23rd, the presidents of the conference is Kamen High School. Their AD and their principal received 5 letters. And I don't know if they all received them all on the 23rd or 24th. I think they were on the 23rd though. From 5 schools from the Northern Illinois Big 12, saying that they were leaving the conference starting in the 2020 school, the 2021 school year. We have not had an athletic director meeting since then. We don't meet in January. We'll re-meet first Wednesday in February. But like I said, so throughout that time, I have met. I had a feeling there'd been conversation about how large we were, like I said, about them possibly removing us from the conference, so forth. So I've been talking to many schools and conferences throughout the process before those schools decided to leave the conference. We didn't really have any. I didn't make any headway, and I didn't make any ground because I was the only school looking, and both majority, all but one of the schools or conferences that I spoke with are even numbered. They're 8, 10, 14 numbered schools. So they're not going to take on one school because that put them at an odd number, which scheduling an odd number school is very, very difficult. Or sorry, an odd number conference. So I really had no luck. The only conference that I really got anywhere with was the Fox Valley Conference. They were at 9. They came back and told us that they weren't interested because of travel in the distance, obviously out to Dekalb from where their schools are located. In the meantime, just tonight, actually, the Fox Valley has approved the option of bringing Burlington Central into their conference. So they have 10 schools, which that's a school that the Northern Big 12 was looking at to try to add to our conference to get us to 6, which will get hopefully get to 8, so forth. So we are currently sitting at 5. I'm sure this question is going to come, so let's address it. Sycamore obviously is included. So the 5 schools that are left out, that are remaining in the Northern Big 12 are Dekalb, Sycamore, Canelan, Yorkville, and Sterling. The asking question will be, are we going to stick with Sycamore, or what are we going to do? I have intentions to try to do whatever we can to stay with Sycamore, but I also have to look out and see what's best for Dekalb and our community and our school. So we are going to try to stay as a package and try to go to some place if we can, but we're not going to limit to it and say that this is what we have to do.
So without your AD meeting, you haven't really talked to Sycamore, see if they would go with you.
I've spoken with a bunch of the ADs that are the ADs of the schools that are remaining. Actually, last Wednesday, those 5 schools met at Dekalb High School just to kind of talk about. Well, actually, we met with Burlington Central also in that meeting to try to get Burlington Central to come with the 5 of us and try to keep our conference intact. Bring them; they'd be a great fit. School size-wise, competitiveness. After that,
am I hearing that that's gone? That option's gone now that Burlington has joined Fox Valley.
Yeah. So after the meeting, actually, they were very professional. We were very understanding. They said, "Hey, we appreciate the opportunity to come hear what we had to say." When it came down to it, the stability of conference of the team conference has been around forever compared to a conference that currently has 5 schools in it. We don't know what the future looks like. Wasn't real appealing to them. So we understood that, but we left the meeting understanding that they would probably, that the recommendation from the superintendent was going to be to go to the Fox Valley, and tonight they're board active on it. That's the discussion. I'm going to continue. I already have. I'm going to continue looking. The 5 remaining schools, like I said, met. We have decided that we're going to try to stay together. Like I said, we're going to try to look at some schools and see if we can bring them in. And at the same time, if that doesn't work, or we don't think that we can get any schools to get to 8, we want to get to 8 schools. So we're a solid conference. We could go with 6, just not real strong and not real solid. It takes 1 school, to leave, and now we're back in a situation of 5 schools and a scheduling nightmare. So I will continue. We're filling out options. Now we at least have some. Now we're at least in a position where I can go to a conference and say, "Hey, we're looking for a new place to go." And I may have some options that obviously they didn't look at me before. It was just us looking, and no other schools were actively looking with us, so I can throw they can throw their hat in the ring, either saying, "Here's 2, here's 4 schools coming in."
Is there anything that we can do? It sounds to me like a lonely task. Thank you very much for doing it, and frustrating. Is there anything that we can do as a board to help you with this process?
I mean, I don't know directly if the board, has anything. If you know people, obviously in communities, things like that. Like Jamie and James have been very helpful, and they'll be key moving forward along with us. Just because ultimately, I can talk to 100 different people, and I can have a lot of different ideas, which I have a lot of ideas running through my head. But unless we get the support of our administration to bring a recommendation to the board, it's not going to happen. Also, ultimately those decisions have to be done through the principal superintendent level. So once we get closer, once we start figuring out some things, it's good when our upper administration can reach out if they know the superintendent and principal, at those other schools or those conferences, they can reach out and try to build some of those bridges there to get those things done. If you know people in any communities surrounding us that are looking for a school, and you can persuade them, they can call me anytime.
I got a question I just don't know the answer to. Do public and private schools mix in conference?
There are some, yes. I'm trying to think. Majority of them are not, but there are conferences that have private and public schools mixed together.
Okay, so it does have.
Probably down in Bloomington Central Catholic. I doubt it. I mean, they're probably in a public league.
They are. U High. Up here, you see more of the parochial schools that are like in the Catholic leagues or parochial leagues. And they kind of stick together, but there's some, and then some of the smaller like 1A, 2A parochial schools have been with public conferences. Yeah, Bloomington and at 10. So
So size of a private school might impact, them to public conference because of matching size. That could happen, I suppose.
And travel.
And travel, yeah.
Travel's always a big part of it.
Right.
So, I mean, our coaches are, I've had a lot of coaches come, obviously they're concerned. We also had a lot of coaches come up with some suggestions of their own opinions, which I'm very open to, and I know we'll try to knock down any door that comes to us and see what our options are. Our coaches are, this isn't a knock on the school, but our coaches are very excited that they don't have to travel to Geneseo.
Yeah, I mean, the distance, Jeff, you asked what could the board do, right? The distance and the expense is probably an area where the board might have to get involved if it got crazy. Right? I don't know how.
Yeah, how much it costs. Well, they are, the board, I mean, that's very much, and that's something that we'll take into consideration. Obviously, we don't want to travel either. I mean, our coaches and our kids and our parents don't want to be leaving on a Thursday night to go, again, nothing in Geneseo, but going to Geneseo for a volleyball game. It takes an hour and 45 minutes to get there. The match takes 37 minutes, and we're back on the road heading home. It's just, it's a lot of time. So that will travel, in size of schools for sure will play a big factor in it. Competitive level in sports, how many sports that schools provide and how many levels they provide. Because we're fortunate enough to have a very extensive athletic program here at Dekalb High School, so we're going to try to continue giving the best opportunities to our kids.
Well, Nick, let's be honest. Part of what has driven this too is the level of competitiveness that Dekalb has risen to.
Yeah, so that has come up. Obviously, and I'm not going to get this number correct probably, but 8 years ago, whenever the Northern Iowa Big 12 was started, all the schools in Dekalb High School in Yorkville were still the two largest high schools. At that time, Dekalb High School was successful in some sports, but some of the sports that covered more so by the paper weren't as good, and that they weren't solid. And since then, we've been lucky to get some coaches and athletes in there that are dedicated and are performing very well now. And that's not sitting well. I mean, one of the teams that's leaving with the teams that are breaking away because they haven't worked out too large is 1,500, and they're staying with the schools that are 900 and 1,100. So
they weren't too large when they were beating us.
Right.
I remember those days.
So I'll keep you informed. Right now, we don't have a home for 2020, but we will do our best to find it. And if not, obviously, this is not an ideal situation, and this is something we don't want to do. But if we don't have a place by then, and the 5 schools are still together, we will have a 5-team conference. It will be very difficult with travel not travel, but scheduling. But we will make it work and get it done. Or hopefully by then we have something to put in place with the 5 of us together, or another option where we have to go find another place.
Thank you again. Please do keep us updated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the buy-in College and Career Readiness Technology Program, and this is an informational item.
Good evening. So here tonight to talk to you about Naviance. Naviance is a program that we have the opportunity to invest in, and that focuses on college and career. The emphasis here on the conjunction and it's a balance of both college and career, and allowing us to do some tracking of student data, which we have not been able to do in the past. Currently, we use Career Cruising. Career Cruising is a program that essentially runs students through a test that shows areas of interest and then allows them to look in fields that they may want to go into and colleges they may want to pursue. And that's about it. What Naviance is able to do is give us information and give information to students that takes a look at their interests, takes a look at programs that they have, and then it allows us to link that with their 4-year plan, so that we're able to track it as they're going through school, whichever direction they happen to go. That information we're able to then drill down to take a look at socioeconomic status for your parents of students who've gone to 4-year colleges, so that when we're shifting resources and looking for areas of support, we know where to go. Where this becomes interest to the board is that there's a cost associated with it. Naviance is a program that does require some funds up front. It's about $11,000 initial investment that goes down over time. The $11,000 is because it's tied with some professional development that our counselors and some of our teachers will need. It will be a shared expense. So from that $11,000, we did take a look at a component of it, which is a personality test that in talking with schools that are using it, we determined wasn't something that we needed. So we're able to trim $2,000 to $3,000 off of the cost right there. KEC is also offering $25,000 to shift towards us. The schools in the area that feed into Kish, the schools that feed into Kishwaukee College are going down this road. So we have the opportunity to partner with some professional development with some of the surrounding schools. Sycamore is already currently using it. In Kishwaukee, we'll chip in $2,500 toward the purchase. District office, both the curriculum and instruction department, as well as student services, will share the remaining balance for the initial year with the high school, and some funds will be pulled from the building budget in order to pay for this. The following years, the cost comes down significantly. Once we take the initial $13,000, Kish's contribution toward it, as well as removal of one, the component of the personality test, it brings it down to about $6,800 for year one. The following year, it's more manageable, about $2,800, and again, that would be a shared investment between the district office and the building budget. Questions over that?
Several, but I only asked a couple of those. When you test, I mean, when it's not, I mean, it's get involved, where it sounds like it's 4-year programs from 9th grade, is that?
Correct, correct. It's something that we would do with our 9th graders and
as the enter. And then, what is the result of this program?
The result is we can provide better guidance for students as they go through their 4 years at Dekalb High School. The other thing that we're going to be able to do is actually pull information that we don't currently have. Right now, if the board were to ask me, okay, James, we added an additional advanced placement class. What did that do to our college enrollment? Were students going to more 4-year universities and completing it? I can't answer that with data. This system actually allows us, because it does link with the transcripts that are going out to universities, it allows us to pull that information. So down the road, when investment is being made into instructional programming, we're going to be able to say, we made this change in 2018, and in 2022, we saw an X increase in student completion at a 4-year university.
So it gives you some tracking information. It allows you to say, here's what we did, here's what the testing that we had, here's what we put in place to assist with those numbers, and then here's the result that we got from data that followed those students.
Correct.
And Jeff, if I may, part of these programs, both Career Cruising and Naviance as well, they're really, the tool is set up to help a student to start to decide what is it that I want to do and be when I grow up. And when we get students in as freshmen and they have, there's personality profiles, there's interest inventories like a strength finder, And kids will go through a survey instrument, and then it will start to match them with different career possibilities and career, the 16 career clusters. Start to point them in a direction of, according to this profile, this is an area where your strengths match up. Doesn't necessarily mean that's where they're going to go, but if nothing else, with their guidance counselor, with them and their parents, it's a discussion point. And then as they work their way through high school, there's other pieces built into this to help match them, to help match them to careers. And also built into this, maybe a student has never heard of a certain type of career. It gives them an opportunity to go and explore, to talk about job outlook, to talk about salary ranges, mid, high, low, what different education levels that particular career would require. And also in some cases, it starts to match with universities, that these universities have great programs in radiology or some other area. So it's really a great tool to help students start to focus what their interests are. Ultimately, we want high school to be more relevant for kids, because we have kids that are just doing high school. They're just floating their way through. Well, we want kids to lock in, to start having a goal beyond graduation. And that's what these types of tools, career cruising and Naviance, that's what these tools help.
I think that's terrific. I mean, I teach in the community college, and I get a lot of those people that did not have the direction, and that's where they find the direction. But it'd be nice to get a head start on that particular process, so that and have some data that goes along with that. So I think we're on the right track here.
It's too late. I mean, I've said this 100 times before, not just here, but all over the place. You got to get the kids when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old and start getting them interested. I mean, when I was back in District 200, they always had people coming in, moms and dads and people from the community, firefighter, engineer, barber, college professor, coming into the classroom and talking to the kids just for 20 minutes or half an hour. That's the problem. I mean, do these guys, Naviance or Career Cruising and other companies like this, do any of these guys have that early component?
Yes.
They do, okay. And then here's the other thing I've often asked about. What about tracking them after graduation, right? So.
That's what he just said.
Well, yeah. I mean, to the point where they have a job. I mean, not just in higher education, not just in university.
Yeah, to actually into the work field, we don't right now have the ability.
That's what I've been told many times. Yeah. And that's where we're failing, because you can shoot in a certain direction, but you can't guarantee it hasn't veered off somewhere, right? Unless you have data on those kids that were in this system, right? And then you can say, yeah, our aim was right, or no, it wasn't. Something changed. Let's find out what changed.
So there are companies that will that pay big dollars. I mean, it's big prices to track down your former graduates post. It's a 2-year, 4-year.
How about survey money?
Even a 6-year.
Now, there's ways to do this without spending tons of money. An alumni association, for instance, tracks the graduates of a university.
But Carrie, we have to crawl before we walk.
Yeah.
And then run. So it seems to me that getting data that this kind of data that
No, I'm
James
not
is asking is for.
I'm not trying to belittle this in any way. I'm just saying that
it's a very good point.
I understand, and that would be great data to have. It's just not really what we're pitching.
Most universities don't they have a really hard time following that.
The other side of
They
the coin.
keep addresses because they want to call at fundraiser time.
So James, this will be a helpful tool to you. In short, this will be a helpful tool to you that guide you not only understanding what the direction that the people want to go in or help them in finding the direction, but also in setting up programs that will, like AP programs, that will help in where there's interest shown.
Whoever can speak to this, one of you guys, I'm sure can. So Kish College was doing career cruising, but no longer going to do that after 19. Why? Why were they in it and why are they getting out of it? Whoever can answer.
Well, I can tell you regionally, we went to career cruising probably 10 years ago, and I believe that KC was using it even before.
This is in Rochelle.
Well, regionally. There were.
All the schools that feed into that.
Yeah, the
Kishwaukee.
feeders to the KC program.
Right.
And Sycamore was using a component of career cruising initially, and at some point in there made the transition to Naviance. Steve Yawn, who was one of the co-owners, founders of Career Cruising, at one time was trying to market the Career Cruising program statewide. In fact, they had it statewide in North Carolina, and they just never did get it to take here. So part of it is the Career Cruising, as we know it, is actually being absorbed or sold to another company, as I understand. And it's time for us to make the switch to Naviance.
So it's a switch. It's not that they're low on funds and they've said we can't do this anymore. They're switching vendors, basically.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So where do we go with that?
So do we have a consensus to bring it back as an action item at the next board meeting?
Yes.
Before you reach a consensus, what are you specifically asking for?
I would like to make the switch along with the schools that feed into our regional community college to make the switch.
So it's all expenses that are going to be.
Correct. Which we're going to be able to find in current budgets.
And so this is an additional expense. We're not doing anything like this right now. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So you're asking basically for about $7,000 the first year if you drop these components.
Correct.
Bring it down from
We'll whittle it
11,
down. Right.
you know, and then about $3,000 a year thereafter. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Showing you consensus.
Okay. And next we have Dekalb Custodian District 428 confidentiality agreement, and this is an informational item.
We just wanted to bring this forward to you for information. One of the projects or processes that the HR department is reevaluating is the onboarding process for staff. Starting from an approach for efficiency, but we're also confirming each of the documents that is distributed to each group and a relative that is in that position. During that process, we found a current confidentiality agreement that has been distributed that required some updates to the language. So we reviewed that and it's included within. We also learned that it was being distributed inconsistently. So there wasn't a whole lot of direct consistency to who actually received that within their packets. And it's our recommendation that we proceed with all new hires, because whether we are staff that work directly with students or staff, all positions here in the district have some level of confidentiality. So the agreement within, we are going to begin including in our onboarding process for all staff. And as we move forward through that process, we'll have more updates that we bring forward from specific policies that need special attention to the onboarding process for staffing. So mainly those who are in the personnel section of the policy manual. Questions? And then this actual agreement supports some of the policies within CHU, which is something else that we're doing, reviewing all of those to make sure that we're relevant and that our supporting policy.
Yeah, so how does it happen? Are you saying that what you want to do is provide this document at HR? I mean, has part of the problem in the past been it's been provided or not provided at outlying buildings, for instance? Or how
This should occur at the HR office once somebody's been recommended for a position. They then are notified by human resources that they are being put forward to the board, and they have to come for new hire appointment, which they have a lot of paperwork to fill out. You know, they have payroll forms to fill out and I-9 forms and so on and so forth. This is one of the forms that has already been established or agreements that has been distributed, but it's been done so inconsistently.
But that's within the office,
correct?
Within HR.
It would come from the HR
okay,
office
okay.
during that onboarding phase prior to board approval, because they go through that process prior to being added to personnel report.
So for all new hires, for all jobs,
correct.
same thing.
Have our attorneys read this. Do you have a consensus to bring this back?
Okay, one more question, please. With respect to any retroactive action, what about that?
Well, it would depend which groups we were talking about. Any affiliated groups that would have to be discussion with leadership. Our recommendation would be that all unaffiliated staff that we continue and seek for, signed agreements for all of those. Especially those that have, for example, when upon approval, our entire HR department will be, reviewing this and answering questions and signing off.
So
The level of information, that we work with, I think is very necessary.
we would offer this to the bargaining units, if they don't already have it. Is that what we would be doing?
It would be, conversations
Discussion
that we
with
have
them.
with leadership.
Yeah.
to
And I want to
discuss
I think it's great, we're going to be more certain and more consistent. But we have to remember about our present employees, that we should also try and be as consistent as possible with that group of employees as well as new hires. But of course, they're, in bargaining against many of them, so that involves them.
Right, I mean, that's conversations that you would have to have with each of those,
Yeah.
independently. Our first step is, making sure the language is what we needed to say, so we made those updates. And the next step is capturing everyone moving forward.
So do we have a consensus to bring this back?
Yes. Thank you.
Next, we have the approval of the 2018-2019 school year calendar. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the proposed calendar for the 2018-2019 school year. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
This is where we're moving it.
Yes.
For final.
Where we're moving it after the starting date will be what?
August 15th. Kinder's August 20th.
Sorry. One of the many reasons for this is that we are having the students complete their semester testing before the break rather than study during the break and have it this little tail end of the semester right after the Christmas break or the winter break.
And we can do this because we have air conditioning, or will have air conditioning.
Tammy's gonna put the air conditioning in.
Ready to
go.
They have all those fans over
For the
there.
fans, they're
We all
on,
set.
they're on sale in the winter time. Okay, so it's consolidated.
Roll call.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albert.
Yes.
Karen Millet.
Yes.
Victoria Dupont.
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez.
Yes.
And Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Next, we have the DCTA letter of agreement, assignment vacancies, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the letter of agreement related to DCTA Article 8.1, Section 4. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeff Albert.
Yes.
Karen Millet.
Yes.
Victoria Dupont.
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Next, we have the recommended revisions to Board Policy of Education policies, and this is a first reading. The Board of Education will hold a first reading on recommended changes to Board of Education policies. Any questions on that?
In a workshop, what the
No,
environment.
I had shared the board policies as recommended by Press Plus. I'd shared that document, last week.
We got feedback on there.
Yes.
Vote back on it.
And then I forwarded there was one policy, I can't remember what the number was, that Henshaw had to review for us and provide a legal recommendation, which was also forwarded as well. I can re-forward all of that information.
I would like to recommend that we move forward with the new policy based on Jamie's recommendations and his emails to us, the 2 emails.
And second reading.
And the second reading. All right. With the consensus on that?
Yeah.
skipped my one item if we can come back to it.
This was Kishwaukee?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I found it, thank you.
We're gonna be here on record time.
Thank you, Don. I almost forgot here.
The time, it's that time.
Going all the way back to board correspondence, thank you. 2018, this year, will mark the 50th anniversary of Kishwaukee College. Throughout the last 50 years, Kish has been providing educational opportunities to the residents of the Community College District 523. I didn't know that was their number. This anniversary provides an excellent opportunity for the Dekalb School District to demonstrate their support of Kishwaukee College by sponsoring an official proclamation, which I'll read in a moment. Throughout the year here in the spring, there are going to be several community events, and these will be well publicized, and the Kishwaukee College staff, Foundation, Kishwaukee Education Consortium, which is a part of Kishwaukee College, certainly invite our community to come out and share in this celebration. Kishwaukee College was founded in 1968, has become one of 48 community colleges in the state of Illinois, educating over 5,000 students annually. This marks the 50th anniversary, an important milestone for this honored institution. Kishwaukee College annually serves many students around our region, including thousands of students who live here in our area. And Kishwaukee College has a remarkable history in higher education, offering career preparation, continuing education, and workforce development. Kishwaukee College partners with other institutions of higher education to provide opportunities for college-level students to complete their degree programs in the most efficient and beneficial manner possible. We wish Kishwaukee College many more years of success and look forward to seeing what the future holds for this great community resource. So congratulations to Kishwaukee College on their 50th year. And again, if you get an opportunity, please go out and participate in some of their celebration activities.
Thank you. And now, with that, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.